Okay, so we're going to start off by looking at Bootstrap Studio. We're going to create a login screen. So I'm going to create a new design. I'm going to call this login create. I'm just going to use one of the given templates. So the login form dark, I thought it's quite nice. So yeah, we'll stick with that. I'm going to change this to username instead of email. Our username is going to be CCT. I don't need to have the forget password. I then export this, and I'm going to export this to my desktop. I've got a folder there on my desktop called WebBSC. Click on that. I'm going to save it in my Bootstrap folder. Export. Now I can exit this, and I go into my Bootstrap folder where I just have, and I can see I have my index.html. In my assets folder is all my CSS, my styling. Now, just double click this. Here I get my index.html. It's just my login screen. Okay, so the next step, what we're going to do is we are going to create a PHP file. So because this is a login screen, we are going to use some PHP code in it. I'm going to drag this folder into Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to start editing my file, and I'm going to put in some PHP code. Okay, so I'm also adding this DB connection at GCP, which I've shared on Moodle, and that's to connect to the database that's hosted on Google Cloud. At the moment, there's no, as you can see, there's no PHP code in it. So we're going to make sure, first of all, that our server is running, and we're going to put some PHP code in it. So I go to my local host. I have a folder called Bootstrap. If I put in my username, it's going to ask for an email address. So see here, I have my input box as email. I'm going to change that to text. Now if I refresh, I put in the username, and it's fine. Now at the moment we don't have any error messages. There's actually nothing happening. So it's pretty blank because we have no PHP code. So this is where we're going to put in some PHP code. With the PHP code, we can allow this functionality of logging in and checking the database to actually work. So I'll just paste it in here, some code. This query uses the procedural interface, just to be aware of that. So we had a look at object versus procedural. I am going to start a session. Okay, so in class we've spoken about sessions, and so we'll demonstrate in this video how to work with sessions. I'm going to include my database connection. Then we're going to check to see if the form has been submitted. And we're going to work with a super global variable called server. And the server is an array containing information such as headers, paths, and script locations. And here we can see that we're going to be dealing with the request method. Okay, so this is stored in an associative array. The request method is post, and if this has been set, we can then say the form has been submitted. We're going to create an SQL statement. You should be familiar with this. Now we can see here that we're using two variables. We're using username and password. So we're going to set these values. And so username is going to be set to post username. So from a form, we're going to have to get the information from the text box where it was defined as username. So in here I have email set at the moment, so I change that to username. I'm grabbing the password, and my text box is indeed password. So the next thing then is we query our database, and the result set we're going to store in a variable called result, and then we fetch the associative array of our result set, and we put that into a variable called row, because we're going to use this row. So row is actually taking in the information from our table in our database. So first I want to check to see if how many rows it has actually found on a successful result. So if we have a password and username and they match, and the number of rows in it is greater than 0, we can then say that our password and username do exist, and hence we can log in. So if count is greater than 0, in other words, if the results that we have found, the number of rows are greater than 0, we can first of all, we could set our session variable, which allows us to indicate that the user has been logged in. And once they logged in, we can redirect them to the page that we want them to see. So at the moment, if they are successfully logged in, they will be redirected to index.php. And if the username and password are not in the database, we want to give them some kind of error message. So now we try and log in with a password that doesn't exist, and you can see down here your login name or password is invalid. Now when I try CCT and then Dublin, capital letters, I am redirected to index.php, which doesn't exist. So I need to change this. So I'm going to change this to landing.php, which I do have. And then entering my credentials, and I am successfully logged in. So the successfully logged in is just a message that I have in my landing.php file.